Hello everyone. In the previous tutorial, I showed you how to create hierarchy for basic humanoid, and it was basically this really simple humanoid, which every body part we're just presenting with one object. That was supposed to give you a good start and help you to wrap your mind around what does this hierarchy thing means. And hopefully you have completed this assignment, and now you have a better idea of why we are grouping stuff under each other and what does this hierarchy needs to be in a certain way. For this tutorial, I'm gonna continue working on this humanoid of mine, but instead of grouping with objects, which we did in the previous video, I'm gonna work with groups of objects, okay? So in the previous tutorial, for example, I grouped like head, the geometry of the head underneath the group neck, okay? But in this tutorial, I'm gonna show you how to use groups of objects. For most of you, your creatures are more complicated than this, right? And they may have multiple body parts that are supposed to be moving together, right? So it would be better to create the hierarchy with groups of objects, as you can see here, instead of just grouping this head, for example, underneath the neck. Another good thing about using groups for creating the hierarchy rather than the geometry itself is that, let me show you something. I'm just going to create, let's just say, I'm going to group the head underneath the neck. So whenever the neck moves, the head moves with it, okay? I'm going to just group the head group underneath the neck. Neck, the geometry, not the group of neck, okay? So let's see what happens here. So whenever I click on the neck in the viewport, all the head geometry is going to be selected with it. That's a little bit confusing if you agree with me, because that's going to be hard. You're not going to be able to click on just the neck because it has this group underneath it. It's going to be selecting the heads and all the parts in it as well. So what I rather do is, let's just ungroup this group head by hitting, not sure if it works if your mouse is over the viewport. Let's just try. Shift P, yes it does. Okay, so Shift P is for ungrouping, right? It doesn't matter if your mouse is over the outliner or is it in the viewport. Well, I guess in the previous video I told you it is supposed to be in the outliner, but well, it doesn't matter, okay? So to ungroup, you can do it like in two ways. And one way would be to middle click and drag it out. Control Z to try another way. The other way would be to select the group that you want to ungroup, or objects, or a couple of objects, and do Shift P on the keyboard. They're going to be grouped under the word, okay? So this time, instead of grouping this head under the neck geometry, let's just create a group for just the neck, because you can group objects underneath themselves. Like, it doesn't have to be like multiple objects, right? So I'm just going to click on neck and hitting Control G on my keyboard. Now I have this group that only has neck in it, okay? So here I'm just going to rename this GR underscore neck. Okay, so now I have this neck group. Just gonna put it, let's say here, and then I have this head group here. Okay, if I click on the group, just gonna open them, hitting this plus sign that is next to them. If you click on them, it's just gonna be expanding and doing this. So here you can see that I can just click on the neck and nothing else is going to be selected with it, right? But if I go to the outliner, and that's not going to be, okay. And also for the head, I can just select on the objects and click on each one of them. But if I want to just select everything in the head, I can just go ahead and the outliner and click the group of the head. Okay, hopefully that's clear enough why we're grouping objects. If you have like a simple creature and you have already done the hierarchy with just the body parts and it works for you, you're able to pose your creature, that's fine. But here I'm going to introduce you to this kind of like more standard, is it even a word, but like this is like the best practice if you want to especially if you want to start rigging the character later. That would be the concept that you're gonna have in mind to create like groups for objects, right? But again, if you have done this with the body parts for your creature and it works, I'm not gonna say, oh, why didn't you do it with the groups? If it works for you, if you're able to move the parts of your object they're supposed to move together, that's fine. Okay. As I showed you in the 2 tutorials before this, I just created these groups for objects, and you know, just to keep that in mind, if you have like really tiny parts and pieces for your object, you don't have to name all of them. Okay, like in here I have this group heap, and well, I actually renamed them, but let's see. Okay, so to select, to find your objects in the outliner, if you select the object in the viewport, holding your mouse over outliner, hitting F, it's gonna like frame that, like it's gonna show it to you the way that it does in the viewport. If you hit F, it's gonna frame that object. So if you do it in the outliner, hit F, it's just gonna show that object to you. Okay, if it's in a group, it's just gonna open the group and show you, okay, here's your object. So you can see here that I had these buttons. I didn't go in and, you know, rename them, because it is not important. Their details, they're going to be attached to the torso, and as long as they're in the torso group, that should be fine. Okay. So remember, only you have to name the groups for sure, because that's where like the main groups that you're using in the like hierarchy, they go at the first level, second level, and the third level. You have to name them. Okay, that's going to be easier for you when you want to later like pose your character. But if there are like multiple objects, like really tiny things, you know, a bunch of objects inside like a body part that are supposed to be just there and they're not supposed to be like moving other than being moved with the object, you know, you don't have to go in and rename everything. Okay. So let's the fun part begin. So the hierarchy, it's going to be pretty much the same as we did with this, our simple humanoid. Okay, I'm just going to hold on to this at the side of my screen so I can take a look at it. Let's just scale it down, scale this one up. Okay, sounds good. So the first thing is to create the hierarchy, right? Okay, I know that the hip is the main body part, which is supposed to be when I want to move this creature, I want to be able to grab the hip group and just move it. So that's the top of my hierarchy. Let's see what goes underneath it. Torso. Okay, let's find the torso group. Torso, where are you? It's here. Okay, so it's the rules are the same. We're just grabbing stuff and grouping them underneath each other to create this hierarchy. But the thing is, instead of selecting the objects, we're just selecting the groups, okay? That's why in the 2 tutorial before this, we grouped all the parts that are supposed to be moving together, okay? So we don't have to think about it now. So now I'm just gonna middle click and drag my mouse until torso is, I'm just gonna release my mouse when I see this rectangle on hip. Okay, I'm just going to release this and I'm just going to open the hip. Torso is now underneath the hip. But remember, if you grab the torso geometry and move it here, nothing's happening, right? Because you didn't grouped the geometry under you didn't group it under the geometry of the hip. You grouped it under the hip group. So you have to select it from the outliner. I hope it makes sense. Okay. As you can see here, hip, there's nothing. This is the hip, right? If you look at it in the outliner, there's nothing grouped underneath it, right? So this is not responsible. This geometry is not going to be responsible for moving the creature. This group is supposed to do that. Okay. So now if I click on the hip group and I move the object, I move it forward, you can see that the torso group, the whole thing is going to be moving with it. Okay, hitting Control Z, first part is done, yay. So what's the second part? I can see in my hierarchy here that I have upper leg and up leg right, and it should be actually saying up leg left. And up leg left, they're underneath the hip hierarchy as well, at the same level at torso. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna just grab the upper leg group again, middle click, drag it over the hip, right? And lower leg group underneath the hip. Okay, oops, not the lower leg, because okay, so now you can see that if you grab the hip group and move everything, it looks fine. But if you grab the upper leg left and move everything, this lower leg doesn't move with it, right? Because it should be grouped underneath this. This is this goes into another level of hierarchy, and I mistakenly put it here. But no worries, I can always do Shift V to ungroup and do it again, or I can just middle click, drag it under the right group, right? I know that the lower leg should follow the upper leg. And that's why I'm just gonna group it under the upper leg, okay? So if your creature is not a humanoid, if the body parts are different, the rules are not gonna change, right? If it's a creature that's walk on 4 legs, if it's a bird, you know, the way that you need to think about it, it's gonna be the same. So you have this hip or whatever part that that creature has, like if it doesn't have a hip, if this whole body is just one object, so that's going to be your top level of hierarchy. And in the second level goes like if your creature has 4 legs, then here you're going to have 4 legs, right? Oops, where did it go? This one. Why are you so big? Here. Windows 10, what are you doing to me? Let's just close this, put it back here. Okay, so where were we? So yeah, if your creature is not a biped, it says 4 legs, or it's a bird, you can just draw a map like this for the main body groups and just work on that, okay? And we're gonna work on this in the class, and I'm around to help you. So no worries about that. You just need to think about it and have a plan, okay? So I'm gonna just do the rest. The foot group left is this, and I know that I should group it under the lower leg left. So I need to open this group because lower left is here, and I'm just gonna drag the left foot underneath this. So you can see the hierarchy here, right? Group hip, upper leg, inside it there's lower leg, and lower leg has foot in it. Okay, so if I just select the upper leg and move it, every hierarchy that is underneath it is going to be moved with it. And if I select on the lower leg and move it, the foot is going to be moving with it, and the foot, it doesn't have any hierarchy in it. Okay. So I'm gonna do the rest a little bit like quicker because that's a tutorial. We don't want it to be like really long. Upper leg, lower leg goes inside the upper leg, and the right foot goes inside the right lower leg. That's the foot. And what else do I have here? Legs. I did the torso, and the torso, so neck should be moving with the torso. So I'm just gonna group the neck under the torso, and then I know that head, all the head group should be moving with the neck, so I'm just gonna group it under the neck, right? And arms are going to be grouped under the torso. Arm left, torso, and then arm left is followed by forearm left. Forearm left here. And then I have groups for fingers. Where is this group? This is grouped under the forearm. Well, for this one, I changed my mind. I don't want this spherical sphere part to be grouped under the arm because I think it would be best if I group it under the fingers. I'm not planning to move the fingers individually. So I think it would be nicer to have like the fingers and this part move together. So what I do here, I'm just going to change the group for this. And you can do the same. You can always decide, okay, it doesn't work if I group it like this. What if I do this? Okay. So you decide like about something at the beginning, and if you change your mind, here is where you can just change it. Okay. So for the hand joint, I'm going to group it under the fingers. Okay, just gonna drag it over the fingers, so that's better. And now I'm just gonna drag the fingers group under the forearm. Sounds good. Okay, I'm gonna do the same for the right hand fingers. So here I'm gonna also group this. So I selected the object in the viewport, holding my mouse over the outliner. I'm gonna hit F. It's just gonna show it to me if it's under a group. So I'm just gonna group this under the fingers. Okay. So now if I click on the finger group, I can see that the sphere is selected as well. Okay. So let's just close the left arm group because we're done with that. We want to have like a less cluttered outliner so we can see the hierarchy clear. So the arm left group goes underneath the torso again, and forearm right goes underneath the arm right. I just need to open this up because I need to put the fingers under the forearm, right? Dragging it here. Hopefully I did everything right. Just to check that, I'm gonna be moving all these groups to see if I did it right. So I'm just gonna select this. Well, I don't need to expand the lower level of hierarchy. So let's just leave the foot and the fingers group, just, you know, let's keep it in the minus side of things. Okay. So now I'm just gonna click on the hip, move everything. Everything looks fine. You don't actually need to move it. If everything is green, it means that everything is underneath it. But it doesn't mean that the hierarchy is correct. Okay, you need to check each level. So the second level would be torso. Torso is moving, that's fine. And then I have the neck group, neck. And inside the neck, I have the head group. Left arm moves. Left forearm, everything moves with it. So the way to find out if it's not working is if I have done something like this. I'm just trying to create an error. Okay, if you grab the forearm, you move it, and the wrist is not moving with it, you know that you haven't put the wrist or hand group in the right place. You're gonna just select on any of the objects in that group that are supposed to be moving with the forearm, and holding your mouse over outliner, hitting F, you can find that this is the object and this is the group, right? So you're gonna find that group, you know it's supposed to be under the forearm, so you can just drag it over the forearm. And you should test it again. It works, okay. Arm right, forearm right, fingers of the right hand, and leg. Tested that leg, but just, you know, for the sake of the, you know, testing everything twice. left leg moves together, lower left leg and lower foot. Okay, so now we have created a correct hierarchy, right? So what should we do next? The next thing we need to do is to make sure that just to make sure that everything is at its default transformation. Like we freeze transformation for the object, and the groups, they're supposed to be, if you don't move the objects with their group, like if I don't do this, you can see this changes the translate Z, okay? Everything needs to be set at 0 where your character is at its default pose, okay? So just to make sure that we have done that right, this is a really important step, okay? Because if your objects have transforms on them, like here they don't show the like default transformation, when you're moving the group, they're gonna be acting weird, okay? Because you get double transformation. Like it means that the object has some rotation or translation on it, and then you're trying to move it in a certain way with a group, but it needs to calculate the transformation twice because this is not set at the default value. That's why it is so important, and that's something that is really easy to fix if you have found that error, okay? What you need to do is that you're gonna select everything in the outliner. So you click on the top level of your hierarchy, opening the lowest level of your hierarchy, and holding down shift you select, let's see if it selects, oh it doesn't, okay. I was hoping I could not introduce you to this command, but apparently I should, or maybe not. Okay, so let's just say, well, let's do that. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is that there's this command in Maya that lets you select the whole hierarchy. As you can see here, if these groups are closed and I try to select everything, I need to, like selecting the top level here, holding down shift, selecting it here, it's not gonna select what is inside those groups, and that's nasty. Okay, we don't want that. We want to select everything, okay? And remember, when you do this, you're just selecting the objects. You need to freeze transformation on the groups as well if you change them. If you like changed their location, if you rotated the groups, you need to fix that, okay? Like for example, if you have started 3D modeling and you have already grouped your objects and everything, make sure you go through this step that I'm showing you in a couple of minutes, okay? So what I want to do is that I want to freeze transformation, which means setting all the channels to their default value for all the objects and for all the groups. Okay, this is really important. Okay, so to do that, you need to do a little bit of a scripting. So you can see underneath here, there is this like window thing that you can type in stuff to. It says Mel. So we're gonna do a little bit of a scripting. We're gonna write down the command for selecting everything, okay? So I'm just gonna click on this top level of hierarchy and holding my mouse over this Mel script window here, I'm just gonna click on it. You can see that it's starting to blink. Like, yeah, I'm ready, type your command. So we're gonna write the command select space dash hi. Okay, this is the command for selecting the hierarchy in the outliner. Okay, so now if I hit enter, it's gonna select everything. Okay, so what was the command? Select space dash hi. This means select hierarchy. Okay, you can have that here and select the top level of your hierarchy or whatever group that you want to select everything, and just hit enter. Does it work like this? If I hit enter now, well, it doesn't. Okay, so while your cursor is showing blinking at the end of this command, first select that group or hierarchy that you want to select everything underneath it, and then select the end part of this smell script. Like click your mouse at the end of it, like HI, just click so it the cursor, you know, is blinking at the end of it, and just hit enter. Okay. So now I have selected everything. What I do now is I can go to modify and do freeze transformation. Just make sure that it is set at the default. Going to the option for freeze transformation, I do edit, reset setting so that it freezes everything. I'm gonna hit apply. Okay. Now I'm sure that everything is set at the default value. At this stage, if you want to move stuff, that's fine. Like, you know, you can move and rotate the torso, but you know that whenever you go back to the channel box and find, you know, when you're selecting the torso and you're in the channel box, you know, if you put the, you know, these values to 0, like rotation and translation. And by the way, you can just select all of them by clicking and dragging here. Okay, I'm just gonna type in 0 and hit enter. Everything is set at the default, and I'm gonna go to the default pose of my character. Okay. So in the next video, I'm gonna show you how to set the pivot points, which is easy. We have done it before. We're just gonna do it again, right? And also I'm gonna show you how to harden and soften edges, right? Stay tuned.